Hello everybody and welcome to Decision Desk HQ's latest video in our series looking at the candidates for the GOP nomination for president and their potential strengths and weaknesses with Republican primary voting groups. You can see our previous profiles at the link in the upper right-hand corner. Today we're profiling South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. Senator Scott, the only black Republican in the United States Senate, announced his candidacy for President of the United States in North Charleston on May 22nd. Prior to officially launching his bid, Scott had announced that his campaign bought in over $5.5 million worth of ads in the first primary states of Iowa and New Hampshire, which he had also recently visited. Growing up in poverty and raised by a single mother, Scott's supporters see his ascent to becoming a U.S. Senator and now presidential candidate as an illustration of the American dream. Spending 14 years on the Charleston County Council, eventually becoming chairman, Scott was eventually appointed to the U.S. Senate in 2013 by former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, another Republican candidate in the 2024 presidential field. Scott enters the race with the support of two influential Republicans, Senator Mike Rounds of South Dakota and Bill Haslam. Rounds has publicly disagreed with former President Donald Trump in the aftermath of the 2020 election and unexpectedly chose to support an alternative candidate in the 2024 GOP primary. Scott chose Haslam, the former billionaire governor of Tennessee and chair of the Republican Governors Association, to become his national co-chair. Haslam has a history of criticizing Trump, and his personal worth will help the campaign financially, as well as allow Scott to build national connections. Now, in case you missed it, Decision Desk HQ's Zachary Danini released an article breaking down GOP primary voters into 5 groups in detail. In this video, we will be examining Scott's Republican primary prospects based on these 5 groups. So do be sure to go read over that article, which you can check out at decisiondeskhq.com, and will be the very first link in the description down below. Beginning with Scott's strengths, he aggressively courted the evangelical right in the lead-up to his official campaign announcement. In the video announcing his exploratory committee, his primary promise was to protect religious liberty. Politico recently reported that Scott had extensive meetings with religious leaders in Iowa and detailed his pitch to them about how he can represent the interests of the religious right as President of the United States. He will have to rely on these voters to serve as his base, and if former Vice President Mike Pence declines to join the 2024 field, Scott may be the Republican with the strongest evangelical bona fides. Moving on, Scott, like many other non-Trump prospective Republican candidates, represents the traditional Republican Party with former President Ronald Reagan's fiscal and foreign policy. He does boast conservative credentials, supporting U.S. intervention and action regarding the war on terror in the Middle East, as well as denying food stamps to people with a family member participating in a labor strike. Now, as for Scott's weaknesses, since he is likely to run a classic liberty, faith, and family style campaign, voters from the populist right will likely be disappointed by his disinterest in culture war issues. Unlike Trump, who dominated the right-wing populists in 2016, or DeSantis, who has built his brand on culture war crusades, Scott's background in the legislative branch means he has fewer concrete victories to tout than the leading 2 candidates, potentially making it harder to win the support of these voters. Finally, Scott is probably not looking to appeal to more moderate primary voters on social issues. His traditional stances on cultural issues such as gay marriage, abortion, and multicultural assimilation will lead him to success with his evangelical base, but he is more socially conservative than Trump in most respects, and would therefore struggle to court these voters in a primary. Looking ahead, Scott will definitely have to do a lot of work in the months after announcing his campaign, given that he currently polls at just 1% in Morning Consult's weekly 2024 tracking poll. Notably, however, Scott does have an extremely low disapproval rating among Republicans, who are very unlikely to have consumed media depicting him in a negative light through the past few weeks, and his campaign will look to keep it that way as much as possible. And while we don't necessarily expect him to come out of the gates firing shots against Trump, Scott has emphasized the need for the GOP to nominate someone who can defeat Joe Biden next fall. In closing remarks on Monday, Scott followed in several of his rivals' footsteps with an implicit shot at the former president. Quote, "We need a president who persuades not only our friends and our base. We have to have compassion for people who don't agree with us." That is the Decision Desk HQ preview of South Carolina Senator Tim Scott's primary campaign. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to click that like button down below if you did indeed like the video, and subscribe to the channel down below if you haven't already as well. Also check out more content from our channel here, and we'll catch you next time.